every time you hear a movie, you hear that they're making a movie about any kind of military. The cast always talks about, well, we had to go through boot camp together, we had to train together. Did you guys have to go through any kind of military preparation training, any kind of boot camp together for Aliens?
Yes. Thank God. Yeah, we had, well, first of all, we had the luxury of, it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Of being there, getting to know each other. Al Matthews been in the Marines, so he, helped us. You can always ask somebody, is this how they do it? Is this how you hold it? Is this how you, the last thing you want to be looking like some silly actor, pretending to do that. And then we had 2 of the stuff in or was it just Tip had been in the RA? So one of the stuff, he'd been in, the special services in Northern Ireland, so he took us through, approaching urban warfare and how to hold guns, all that stuff. Yeah.
And then prior to the whole cast being together, because when I was hired to do the movie, I was a wimp. So I had to train for, it was almost 3 months, because Cameron wanted me to really bulk up, which I managed to do. Of course, Jenette was already buff and made us all like real wimps. But then once we all came together, they put us through our paces pretty well. And that was pretty funny to see Paxton struggle to run 5 miles.
This was, I know, an early role for you, Mark, and your first film role, right? So what was that like, being kind of
terrified?
It's a really kind of sink or swim situation, right? You're really kind of thrown into the deep end with a movie like this.
Yeah, technically, I'd been acting. I was a theater actor, went to drama school, been on the stage. So it wasn't the, being with actors in the park and doing all the script research. It was, the technical stuff, which still kind of blows my mind. Where the eye goes, where your eye line is, and how it turns around. That stuff is really hard. Because you have to remember that and act, So that was difficult. But I relied on all of my friends and fellow actors to help me. And Cameron also, he knew I had never been in a film, so he was very helpful, like where to look, what to do,
I know that there's stories of the crew having issues with Cameron as a filmmaker, as sort of a taskmaster and stuff, but as actors, what was the experience like for you guys working with him?
Well, I think really it wasn't so much that people had issue, it was really kind of a clash of cultures, because in England, our first AD, Derek Kraftner, was a really well-known first AD. He'd done numerous major films. And I think it was more like, Derek had the idea of how the set was going to be run, and in England, slight differences between how it works in Hollywood. Like in England, they break for tea every couple of hours. It's a thing. And for Jim, that was a real anathema, because it was like, what the hell are they doing? They're having tea again? It's like, because Jim just wanted to shoot. But and then Jim, you have to understand, it isn't so much that he was a megalomaniac or a hard ass. It's just that Jim was on the hook for the movie. If the movie went over budget, and it wasn't a huge budget compared to today's movie, it was only $18 million, but still. Any overages he and Gail and Hurd had to pay for, so he was determined to get the movie done the way he wanted it. And they ironed things out, right? Yeah. And then the crew was brilliant. The British crew were phenomenal.
Yeah. There was a little bit of they were not used to having, a female star, a female producer, and female leads, and just the way they sort of treated, it was a little bit, a little condescending sometimes, the way you were spoken to, and it's like that, so they had to sort of put a stop to that.
As in terms of you guys working with him as actors, was he was he attentive to everything you needed, or because obviously he's being pulled in a million different directions, like you said, he's on the hook and really trying to make sure this movie's working, but was he...
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he knows that, he knows, one thing, he can do everybody's job except for act. So he doesn't think of, so he doesn't give any line readings. I mean, he casts and he will let you improvise it to a point. I mean, you have to incur his wrath if it's a terrible, line you want to add in, or if you're wasting his time, God forbid. And that's what I'm saying, don't waste my time. I have no time. If it works, it works. And the only time I added anything in, and I was terrified because I just thought, but I have to do this, is the pull-ups. Because the scene, it doesn't say she's doing pull-ups, it just says, they're asleep, they wake up, they get dressed, and here's the lines. That was it. And, when I realized, oh my God, I'm in a tight t-shirt, and the line is, have you ever been mistaken for a man? And I just felt, okay, well, he's pretty dumb, but he's not that dumb. There's no way that I'm mistaken for a man in a tight t-shirt. So I just had this idea that I could do these really difficult pull-ups, and I said, I thought if I'm doing it while, he says it while I'm doing something, and then you put the camera a certain level. And so I said that to Jim, I said, let me just tell you, this will make the scene work, or I'm going to do the scene where the two of us, we get up and we work out, and he was like, okay, right, because they had to stop everything, get a bar set up, and to make the scene work. But that was about the only little improv we build, like throw all the shit in, everything. You never stop.
And Cameron would also say, yeah, Bill, say that, don't say that.
They had a long-term relationship, but oh my God,
What was the relationship like between you two on the film? Because you guys are sort of a unit inside of the unit. So
Yeah.
how did you guys go about building that chemistry together, even inside of the larger Marine unit?
Yeah, well, we were fortunate, in most films, like, you don't have the luxury of rehearsing at all. They just throw you right into it, and you're suddenly doing a scene.
Here's your husband.
Yeah, right. But, we were lucky, we rehearsed, and Jenette had a lot of time to, just iron out what our backstory was. And then, during the course of the making the film, the way Jim wrote it, obviously we were a team.
We had to sit together. Well, the first 2 weeks was with the smart levels. That was the first 2 weeks straight. And so we were strapped into these things, and they didn't want to let us out because it was really difficult. This was on a gaffer's tape, and if we had to go to the bathroom, they had to shut it down. And so we had these special stools made for us to sit on this horrible stool with like this notch in it where you could put your gun. And so between it, we would sit there, the two of us. Couldn't even, are you okay? Oh my God, is your back there? My back hurts. Oh my God. All the other actors are kind of like relaxing and drinking water.
Yeah, Paxton and Riser.
Yeah.
We're telling jokes, eating cookies.
So we had a lot of time. There's one photo of me, a shot, and I'm sitting here and I'm like looking really mean, and I'm like looking at my position, and I'm like, wait a second, this isn't from the movie. This is me just sitting in a corner, just relaxing, and just looking just like.
So the upside to it was that Jen and I sat so long together that we became very good friends, and still friends to this day. And and there were some lonely times because everybody would walk away, and we would just be like,
hello.
Why do you think it is that 35 years later that Vasquez is still such an icon for so many fans?
It's kind of crazy. I mean, first of all, it's 35 years ago, there was not any strong women. I mean, I guess in the 40s, Barbara Stanwyck, those kind of, the only character I remember going, was Jenna Rollins in Gloria. Did you ever see that movie? Anyone? No? Casavetes? Anyone see Gloria? You let a woman beat you, you punk! She was just so tough. And, women are so strong. I mean, has anyone ever met like somebody's grandmother or mother. And, you know, you'd think that writers have never met a real woman before, so it was so odd that this character existed, you know, or it was odd that she hadn't existed before. So that's kind of what I think, you know, her being Hispanic, her being, you know, also that it wasn't kind of like pointed, oh, look, there's a woman, da, 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 da. You know, she was just the best, she was doing her job, it was the future.
And you also have to realize too, it's like, Jenette is a good little Jewish girl from Beverly Hills. But she transformed into this badass Latina, and I'm not kidding. You know, I worked my ass off to look buff. Jenette came just ripped. Ripped. So, that's yes, and there were.
I mean, it was unusual at the time. I mean, it was kind of strange. I'd been in gymnastics as a little girl. I used to compete in gymnastics, so I was always athletic. But after leaving drama school and being in England, I, you know, was unemployed and, you know, doing stuff. And there was a gym near me where Mr. Britain and Miss Britain worked out, just happened to be. And so I would go, and I thought she was really cool, and I was like, you know, this is kind of fun, lifting weights, and there were no other women. It was just me and Miss Britain, you know, it was fun, and I would go there. And so for 2 years straight, that was kind of like my mental health. I would go for a run, and I'd go lift weights. So it just coincided by some, you know, miracle coincidence that at the end of my 2 years of training, that I then auditioned for this movie. So, and they were like, oh my God, are there any other actresses for it? This idea. And so I started thinking of, like, you know, the depression age, you know, when you did the peroxide in the bathroom or the bleach, and then I thought, well, you're on the road, you don't have time to touch up your roots. And I was just kind of thinking of the postman always rings twice, that kind of hard scrabble lady who just wants out. You know, she's willing, you know, she's willing to become a vampire and just get out of her boring life of poverty. So that's kind of how we did it. And then we sort of built our costumes, and it was fun. It was great. It's great to be able to be a part of the creative process.
Yeah, I want to know what were the hardest and the funniest scenes. Okay.
Well, mine and Aliens was
Your first day, right?
but my very first day. It was one of the first days of shooting when I did my death scene. You know, I had to get in there like 4:30 in the morning. I had to do this appliance that had tubes running up my leg and underneath the appliance, and they had varying little chemicals that they would come out, and then they had to spray water on them, and one would bubble, and one would fizz, and the other would smoke, and they were toxic. So, you know, I had the instruction that, you know, right before they sprayed the water on to activate them, I had to hold my breath, hold a real live flamethrower, turn and fire directly at our director, not above, directly at him, meaning a huge piece of plexiglass in front of him, and then fall in between numerous fire bars, and then wait for two really big dudes, because I weighed about 235 pounds then. Wow. Two really big guys came and picked me up and put me in front of a helicopter fan to blow away the toxic crap, and then I could breathe.
So they don't teach you that in drama school?
Yeah, they did not teach you that. But yeah, that I went home that night and I was like, wow, that's an introduction to action filmmaking.
Oh, I remember. It was like, and lean and go and do it and fire it.
Yeah, and then I only did it twice, because the first time I kind of blew the take, because as I turned and I see Jim Cameron and the DP there, I kind of fired slightly above them, and then Jim comes over and he goes, Mark, no, fire directly at me. I was like, Jim, really? I said, yeah. He wanted it right down the lens of the camera. So when you watch the film again, you'll see there's a flash, and that's me with dead aim.
And the reverse, so then we did the reverse of that. It was a lot later, so the inside. So same thing, I had a real live flamethrower, the same thing, and I, with the gun, and because what I was wearing, it was so heavy, you could be thrown out of the vehicle. So there was this emergency release on my gear that could be released from it. So I'm inside the APC and we're all there, and the flame comes, you know, it's the same thing when it comes and you lean and you go away and you don't get, you know, burned. And when we all did that, we all take a breath, and the fire combined with some finishing paint they had done to age the inside of the vehicle, and it produced this toxic gas. And all of us started, we could not breathe, we couldn't breathe, and like Michael pulled my release thing, and the thing, and we ran out, and we were like, oh my God, and they sort of shut the thing down and tried to figure out what the hell happened, and then they redid it, and then they did a flame effect, because they realized, oh my God, what happened. But of course, as you look closely in the film, they kept our real reaction of almost dying and panic from when we were actually panicking and almost dying, and I was just, so you can always use, you know, mistakes, right? Well, you don't end up killing your actor.
We got time for probably one more, right?
I could ask both of you 20 questions, but Jenette, I want to ask you, wasn't this till a couple of years ago I realized that you were not that skinny? I did a Google search and I'm like, wait, like, this doesn't make sense. When you were playing that part, and you played a strong female who kind of, in my opinion, stole the show from like Sigourney Weaver, did you have any pushback to kind of pull that character back a little bit, even though it's like competition with Ripley's character in the film?
No, you know, there wasn't wasn't because it was going to be in competition with Ripley. It was kind of in the 80s, there was the idea of like female characters had to be likable, you had to be, the audience had to identify with you, and that kind of stuff. And you know, when you're building a character, you know, you're not thinking about your audience and being locked, you're thinking about what you need to do to survive and get out of it. And so I had talked to Jim about how I was going to play her, and it was pretty tough, and it was like, I don't think people may not like me, I'm not trying to be a likable person, or there's all these rough edges, and you know, and he was like, don't worry about it. I mean, that was always when he was with the actors, he was like, you know, I cast you, this is how you're going to play it, you know, don't worry about what anybody has to say. And, you know, I think this is in the pudding, is that it's interesting, you know, when you go out like, oh, like me, people don't, you know, people recognize a real, living, human, breathing person. They don't have to be perfect and pretty and likable and all of that. You know, they just have to be real.
We are just about out of time, so thank you both so much for being here. Say hi. Thank you guys again.
Thanks a lot.
For paying
Thank you.